The Duterte and Marcos families in the Philippines have completely fallen out and entered a dual mode according to Reuters. In the early hours of November 23, Sara Duterte, the daughter of the former President Rodrigo Duterte and the current Vice President of the Philippines, strongly criticized President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., First Lady Luisa Araneta Marcos and House Speaker Martin Romualdez in an online press conference. She said, "This country is heading for hell because we are led by someone who doesn't know how to be a president. He's a liar." Sara also made astonishing remarks. She revealed that she had already given orders to people that, if she was assassinated, they should go and kill Marcos, the First Lady and the House Speaker. And she wasn't joking. Sara was pushed to the edge and lost her temper like this. Those who know her would recognize her as the Vice President, while those who don't might think she was just an angry woman in a live stream normally. If she really wanted to take down Marcos and his group, it would be most effective to deliver a fatal blow to her opponents without making a fuss. Making public threats of violence actually has little practical effect other than putting the opponents on high alert. However, the situation in the Philippines is rather special. Sara did this to make the other side dare not lay a hand on her. The power base of the Duterte family is in Mindanao, where there is an independent military defense force. If Ferdinand Marcos Jr. wants to harm the Duterte family, he has to think about the consequences for himself. The political situation in the Philippines has reached the point of taking up arms against each other. What on earth has happened? The immediate trigger was the illegal arrest of Ati Reynold Munze AC, the chief of staff of Sara Duterte's vice presidential office. This was a plot by Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to besiege the Dutertes since coming to power. Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has been acting contrary to the right course in both domestic and foreign affairs and has been following the United States blindly. It's not an exaggeration to say that he's seeking glory by selling out his country. All the political legacies left by Rodrigo Duterte were squandered by Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in less than 2 years, and the alliance no longer exists. Rodrigo Duterte once had a face-to-face conversation with Ferdinand Marcos Jr. But while Ferdinand Marcos Jr. dealt with Rodrigo Duterte with lies, he was also stepping up his moves against the Duterte family. At the same time, the primary target was Vice President Sara Duterte, whose approval rating was around 70%. There is little doubt that the Duterte family will make a comeback in 2028. In the summer of 2022, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. was elected President of the Philippines, and Sara Duterte was elected Vice President before Ferdinand Marcos Jr. took office. The experienced Rodrigo Duterte took precautions against him previously. The security of both the President and Vice President of the Philippines was uniformly handled by the security team of the Presidential Palace, just like the Secret Service of the White House. However, Sara Duterte established an independent vice president's security team and expanded its size from over 80 people to 430 people. Most of the members of the security team were from the military, and a small number were from the police, although Rodrigo Duterte didn't know what would happen later. This arrangement provided the greatest security guarantee for his daughter. The core members were carefully selected from Davao City, the hometown of the Duterte family, and they often conducted anti-assassination drills since January 2024. The conflict between Sara Duterte and Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has gradually become public. Rodrigo Duterte firmly opposed Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s acts of diplomatic provocation on January 30th. Rodrigo Duterte held a press conference in Davao City and launched the Mindanao Independence movement to get rid of this terrible president. The independence movement was led by Congressman Pantaleo and Alvarez. Rodrigo Duterte said, "This is not a rebellion, nor a bloody rebellion." Ferdinand Marcos Jr. didn't correct his mistakes because of Rodrigo Duterte's independence warning. Instead, he took even greater risks by escalating provocations in the South China Sea and luring the U.S. military to Luzon in order to deal with Sara Duterte. Ferdinand Marcos Jr. made moves against her security guards in mid-July. Philippine National Police Chief Benjamin Acorde Jr. suddenly transferred 75 police officers from the Police Security and Protection Group, PSPG, which was under the Vice President's Security and Protection Group, VPSPG, on the grounds that there was a shortage of police forces in the capital. Without notifying the Vice President's office in advance, Sara Duterte as Chief of Staff, Ati Reynold Munze AC, had an argument with Police Chief Benjamin Acorde Jr. But Benjamin Acorde Jr. had the support of the President behind him and forced the 75 police officers to leave. Sara Duterte sarcastically commented that she hoped that after these 75 police officers joined the Manila police force, the public's criticism of the drug epidemic would decrease and various criminal activities would also decrease. Among these 75 police officers, 33 were from Davao City and were willing to take bullets for Sara Duterte. Colonel Raca, the head of Sara Duterte's security team, was extremely worried about this because Rodrigo Duterte had numerous enemies, which created loopholes in the Vice President's security. However, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. aimed to create such security loopholes to give the enemies of the Duterte family a chance to take action. Nevertheless, Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s plot was not fully realized as he couldn't transfer the military security personnel away. Subsequently, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. focused his target on Zuleika Lopez, the Chief of Staff of Sara Duterte's office. As the Chief of Staff, Lopez was calm and composed. She was responsible for the operation of the Vice President's administrative team and security team. She had been with Sara Duterte since 2007. Originally, she was a faculty member at the University of the Philippines Mindanao campus in 2007. When Sara Duterte served as the Vice Mayor of Davao City, Lopez served as the Secretary of the City Council. Her uncle, Elias Lopez, was a former mayor of Davao City and a member of Rodrigo Duterte's team. She and Sara Duterte could be regarded as a combination of the next generation and were as close as sisters. In 2010, when Sara Duterte became the mayor, she served as the municipal administrator and was called the Little Mayor. In 2016, when Rodrigo Duterte became the president, Lopez went to Manila and worked at the Philippine Bureau of Investigation, but soon Rodrigo Duterte asked her to return to Davao City to assist Sara Duterte. In 2022, she became the head of the Vice President's election campaign team and then the Chief of Staff after Sara Duterte was elected. Sara Duterte entrusted her with many tasks, including some confidential matters, by weakening the security forces and then splitting up this pair of sisters. Sara Duterte would lose her strongest safeguard in October. Ferdinand Marcos Jr. instigated House Speaker Martin Romualdez to deal with Lopez. The House of Representatives then urged the Department of Justice to investigate the Vice President's office because some members suspected that out of the 125 million pesos in confidential funds used by the Vice President's office, more than 73 million pesos had not been approved by the Commission on Audit. The House of Representatives asked 7 officials from the Vice President's office to appear before Congress for questioning. The other 6 people were just extras, and the real target was Lopez. After the House of Representatives issued subpoenas, Lopez repeatedly refused to attend the hearings. The House of Representatives charged Lopez with 2 offenses: interference with the judiciary and contempt of Congress. On October 18, Sara Duterte said that if the House of Representatives wanted to detain the staff of the Vice President's office, she also requested to be detained together. Ferdinand Marcos Jr. side then used public opinion tools to vigorously hype up the so-called confidential funds case of the Vice President. On November 20th, Lopez attended the House of Representatives hearing but was detained by the police and locked in a room in Congress until November 25. The next investigative hearing on November 22nd. Sara Duterte came to the House of Representatives and asked the police to lock her up with Lopez. The Speaker said that the House of Representatives had no intention of detaining the Vice President, so Sara Duterte simply moved into the office of her brother, Paulo Duterte, a congressman, on that day and stayed there until Congress released the illegally detained Lopez. After learning that Sara Duterte had moved into Congress, Lopez released a video on Zoom. She said with tears streaming down her face that several men entered the room where she was under house arrest in the middle of the night, claiming to be from the Philippine National Police and asking her to be transferred. But she refused after pushing these men away. She called Sara Duterte, saying that her life was under threat and that the country had lost justice and the rule of law late that night. Someone changed the plan again and didn't intend to detain her until November 25. They instructed the House Speaker to find a way to send her to prison at 3 o'clock in the early morning of November 23, led by police officer Taz. Several policemen dragged Lopez out of the room and sent her to the Veterans Memorial Medical Center VMMC for a physical examination. Reporters from the Manila Bulletin photographed that as soon as Sara Duterte learned that the other side had taken action, she immediately rushed over, and Lopez hugged her and burst into tears. Finally, Lopez was carried on a stretcher by the police and put into an ambulance. And Sara Duterte also got into the ambulance and followed her to the physical examination, according to Philippine media. She was detained in the women's prison in Mandaluyong City. Therefore, Sara Duterte was so angry in the video that she threatened to kill Ferdinand Marcos Jr. If she was assassinated, some senators couldn't stand it anymore. On November 23, Senator Ronald told the media that as the chief of staff of the vice president's office, how could Lopez be sent to prison without a court trial? If the House of Representatives could do this, how many more people would be locked up in prison in the future? On Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s side, he continued to wage a public opinion war, saying that Lopez would give testimony unfavorable to Sara Duterte, which was why Sara Duterte had been staying with her all the time. In fact, regarding the so-called confidential funds case, could Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s presidential office stand up to scrutiny? His confidential funds were dozens of times that of the vice presidents in the Philippine political arena. Everyone knows each other well. What was Ferdinand Marcos Jr. pretending to be innocent for? Sara Duterte spoke harshly, while Ferdinand Marcos Jr. acted ruthlessly. Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s roadmap was already clear. He took action against the Duterte family, which posed the greatest threat to prevent Sara Duterte from winning the 2028 election. After eliminating the influence of the Duterte family in Congress, he can then carry out constitutional amendments, abolish the clause that the president serves a 6-year term and is not eligible for re-election, or change to a parliamentary system and assume the position of prime minister himself. Just like in Singapore. In this way, he can freely sell out the country, just like his father, Ferdinand Marcos Sr. did. He can use overseas loans to create the illusion of economic prosperity, then transfer assets overseas, leave huge debts to the country, and leave 83% of Filipinos living below the poverty line. Since the Duterte family has been pushed to the wall, they can only fight to the death. The independence movement and the stance of Mindanao, where the Duterte family has influence, against Luzon, where the Marcos family has influence, is not the real intention of the Dutertes. Instead, it is a way to rally their supporters in the hope of making a comeback to the presidential palace. However, the situation is urgent and Rodrigo Duterte must make a decision as soon as possible.